Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 39 of Generation GC. My name is Maria Hudelson. I'm your host, and today we're talking about Makeshift Love from Youth Authority with Maria Sherman. Last week, we talked about Standing Ovation from Cardiology. A few days ago, we had a bonus episode on Good Charlotte's cover of Last Christmas, and next week, we'll be back talking about a song from Generation RX. Maria is the author of Larger Than Life, A History of Boy Bands from New Kids on the Block to BTS. It's a book that was released this summer, all about boy bands, as you guessed from the title, and it's a really fun read. I learned a lot from reading it. It was very informative and educational, but it also did a really nice job of legitimizing the boy bands that so many of us obsessed over and just absolutely loved and continue to love. Maria is also a longtime music journalist, and notably to this podcast, she has written about Good Charlotte quite a bit for outlets like Rolling Stone, Billboard, Fuse, and more. And something that I've really appreciated about her writing, that I think you all will too, I'll link a few pieces in the show notes, is that you can really tell that not only is she a fan, like she loves the music, but you can tell that she has such appreciation and admiration for what the band is doing. She did a lot of writing about GC around their return from hiatus, so I think you'll all really enjoy this episode. As a reminder, as I have been saying the past several months, please visit antisemitism.card.co and blacklivesmatters.card.co to learn more about anti-Semitism and the Black Lives Matter movement, respectively. Fighting injustice begins on the individual level, and it begins with educating ourselves, so it's really important to keep ourselves informed. Finally, Generation GC stickers are here. Do you want a sticker? Two things you could do. Number one, you can support the show at anchor.fm/generationgcpod. Click support, and that helps me keep the show going. It helps me have whatever equipment I need, such as microphones, headphones, cords. It also helps me do things like print stickers and get them mailed to y'all. Number two, you can make a charitable donation. There's a lot of great organizations listed at blacklivesmatters.card.co, so I recommend checking that out. Any amount will do, whatever you can give. I know those organizations could really use your help. And then you're going to take a screenshot of either your support of the show on Anchor or your donation and send it to me along with your mailing address, and I will send you stickers. That's about it for our intro. Thank you all for tuning in, and now on to episode 39.
All right, so Makeshift Love is track 2 on Youth Authority, Good Charlotte's 6th album, their comeback album released in 2016. Track 1 was Life Changes, track 3 was 40 Ounce Dream, and it was released November 5th, 2015, their first song coming back from hiatus just like 2 days before. It was co-written and produced by John Feldmann, and when I was putting my notes together, I had to include this anecdote that you, Maria, that you had included in your review of their comeback show at the Troubadour, like I think a few weeks after this song had come out. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to read this story because I think all listeners will get a kick out of this. John Feldmann, longtime producer of the band and frontman of ska punk icons Goldfinger, joined Good Charlotte on stage for their reunion single Makeshift Love. He crowd-surfed and he picked up Joel mid-bridge. Feldmann once told me how he met the GC twins one night when his band was playing a show at DC's famed 930 Club. Benji crowd-surfed his way to the stage, stole the microphone from Feldy's grasp, and screamed, "Good Charlotte!" After the gig, he approached John, knowing his annoyance full well, and said, "I have a band, we're called Good Charlotte." I feel like that's very just telling of a lot of their chutzpah, at the time. That I would hear all these stories of them just sending cold letters to record labels of, "Oh, you can sign us now for cheaper," or, "Wait till we're famous and it's going to cost more." And this feels very emblematic of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really only endearing if you have the talent to back it up. Right. Otherwise, it's just
it's like actually annoying.
It's like making a grand romantic gesture, but if two parties aren't on the same page, it's like stalking.
Right. There's like an equation that's like creepiness and attractiveness are directly inverse.
Totally. Yeah, there's a How I Met Your Mother episode about that. But now that you've read something I wrote and have like limited memory of, but it's sparking something within me. Not to get too tangential, but I remember Feldy also told me the way that he started working with The Used was kind of similar, except for frontman Burt McCracken like ran onto his tour bus. So apparently if you want to work with Feldy, but also only in the early 2000s.
Right.
Or even maybe early 90s or late 90s, it was a good idea to harass the man. Maybe not so much now. He seems like he can find talent the old-fashioned way. But it is sort of delightful that they were those Madden brothers were so delightfully delinquent back in the day.
Yeah. This song was also written with Nick Furlong, which was a name that I had not been familiar with, but he's known for writing as well as doing vocals for the Avicii song The Nights. He's worked with several DJs like Kygo, Steve Aoki, Diplo. He's also worked with a lot of other bands that people listening to this are going to love. Five Sauce, Blink, Front Bottoms, and one of my personal favorites, Walk the Moon. Makeshift Love was Good Charlotte's first song to chart on the Billboard Hot Rock Songs chart at number 30, November 28th, 2015. It also hit number 9 on Rock Digital Song Sales. And I have played this live a bunch. Setlist.fm shows 68 times, but I don't know if that's entirely accurate. I always feel like I have to put that disclaimer. They've played it at like most of their shows since coming back. Not every single one, but most. And there is a music video, which we'll talk about later. But Maria, first, I want to help our listeners get to know you.
All right.
So first question I like to ask everyone is, when did you first hear Good Charlotte, and what were your first thoughts on them?
I don't think they know this, and I promise you I wouldn't have admitted it 5 years ago, but now that I'm like approaching 30, I have less of a filter. But I knew about them because like by the time that they sort of existed, I was living in Northern Virginia, so it would have already been like a regional sort of fascination. But I did not like them, and and the reason was like I think like my sort of entryway into like pop punk and then eventually like emo and I don't know when much of this music became very popular in like the early 2000s. I think I had internalized a lot of environmental misogyny, and because
totally fair, yeah.
And because Good Charlotte was a band that seemed to appeal quite like obviously and broadly to young women, I thought maybe it was too poppy for me, or wasn't like hard enough. It wasn't like real, and I'm saying this in air quotes and eye rolls. There's something about it where I'm like, oh, well, like young women like this, so it can't be like real rock music or something, which is so embarrassing and like so vehemently the opposite of everything I believe in now.
So when did things change? Because like I had Jesse Cannon on over the summer, and he was like, oh my God, you need to have Maria on this show. When did things change? Because like I can tell from your writing now when you've written about Good Charlotte that you love them. So like when did that switch happen?
Sure. I think I like always appreciated the songs, but it was more like a public like, ew. I'm dismissing this thing because I have been taught to dismiss things that women like in general. I think a lot of it was like maybe like later teenage years. There wasn't like a song or anything. I really wish there was some sort of like or like theatrical
like turning point,
where I was like, oh, I'm so wrong about this, but now it sort of feels like that passed me, so I'm so far divorced from it, where it's like they were just incredible songwriters straight out the gate, and even like that sort of celebration by young women that I like dismissed as a young woman, now it's like one of my favorite things about them, and even in speaking to them, there is such an appreciation for young female fans and young female musicians and in general. And now I kind of see a lot of that as maybe, and maybe this is just me being too presumptuous, comes from their background, sort of being raised primarily by their mother. I've noticed that like when I talk to a lot of musicians, the ones who typically have a lot more young female fans and are respectful to that audience.
They have a sister too, don't they?
Yes, yeah. They either they were like raised by a strong mother or were like raised by strong women around them. And that really comes through with especially who the Madden brothers are as people. And makes sense that they would be welcoming and open to that audience, especially at a time when like Warped Tour World and all that stuff infamously wasn't.
Which is weird because so many of the bands had like female dominated fan bases.
Totally.
So it was always a weird time, like for me growing up and like wanting to go to shows and stuff, being like, well, I feel like this is for me, but a lot of people are acting like I'm not welcome. But it was like a weird place to kind of be in.
Yeah, totally. But I think Good Charlotte was very, like, maybe not explicitly, but sort of aware that, like, if you have young female fans and you're doing something right because they become tastemakers, they are extremely loyal and fervent in their fandom, and we love them for that.
Yeah. And on, very related note, so this summer you put out a book, Larger Than Life, A History of Boy Bands from New Kids on the Block to BTS, which does a great job at really legitimizing boy bands and talking about, they are for young women, right? And the ones who are successful tend to be appreciative of that.
And when they're not appreciative of it, they break up or they have solo careers.
I don't know if I should. I'm going to call them out by name, but maybe I'll decide to edit this out. But there's a 5 Seconds of Summer profile, I think, back to when they did that thing a few years ago where they were like, we're going to rebrand or whatever.
Yeah.
And they talked about how they, like, didn't want to be a boy band.
Sure.
And I remember reading that, and I was like, oh. Like, I'm probably a little older than, because I'm 29. So I'm like, I'm probably a little older than the, tween girls, but I was like, oh, I feel kind of like othered now. Like, you don't want me?
Yeah, that was, I know exactly what you're talking about. It was a Rolling Stone cover story in like either December 2015 or like
something
January.
Like that,
around that, and so it seems really tone deaf, and I hope that they feel a little embarrassed about that now, because it's like, you don't want the stigma surrounding the terminology boy band. You don't want to other those loyal fans that you have. And it's like, it's some nuance that gets lost, and I'm sure is really challenging if you feel like you're being infantilized and you're like a 23-year-old dude who just like wants to drink whiskey and like make out with models. Totally get that. However, doing a Motley Crue thing in the 2010s is like way less endearing than just being like, oh, we love our female fans, and also we're gonna do this like radio rock thing now. Join us or don't,
Right. I mean, and their Five Sauce's most recent record I loved. Like I've had on repeat.
I think they're becoming like I think they were always excellent songwriters, and I think they're certainly honing their own craft. It's just like there was like 2 years of interviews where I'm like, oh god.
Yeah. But that's people grow, and I'm sure.
Growing pains.
So in the book, you do mention Five Sauce. You mentioned Blink briefly, the All the Small Things video. Where do you think Good Charlotte kind of fits into that like boy band narrative? Like, what do they share with boy bands? Do you consider them a boy band in any way?
Yeah, that's such a fun question. I feel like maybe the answer is yes and no, which is such a cop-out, but I don't think of boy bands as black and white, so there is obviously room to dip your toes in it a little bit. The fact that Good Charlotte had such a large young female fan base, and that they began right at the end of the sort of golden age of boy bands. I'm talking NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, calling it quits in 2002. Kind of signifies that they probably adopted some of that audience. If
they were all over like Tiger Beat and everything.
Exactly, yeah, and same with like My Chemical Romance and like Pete Wentz and like Brendan Urie and all these people. There was certainly some overlap, and I think that time period with these bands being embraced on like TRL and MTV and these like traditionally pop or like R&B hip hop spaces, at least around that time. You kind of get maybe I don't know. I feel like they are part of the boy band story, but they're also outside of it. I'm still trying to figure this out because I write about this time period of music a lot, especially now that it's like 20 years old, which makes it vintage, which really hurts my heart. Trying to figure out how boy bands kind of age just into the like Good Charlottes of the world in certain ways, by also acting as some sort of alternative, though the fans were sort of similar, behaved in similar ways. Like if you talk to One Direction fans, you talk to like My Chemical Romance fans, they're probably going to use the same language of like.
I almost feel like a lot of, not entirely, but I'm thinking of like a couple of friends of mine that love 1D and love My Chem.
Oh, okay. Well, I love that. I think it's just they like good songwriting, you know?
Right, yeah.
But like it's, I guess like where this really gets sticky for me is 5 Seconds of Summer, because those first two albums, like to me, were like, this is a pop punk boy band in the way that I think like All Time Low is a pop punk boy band. But Good Charlotte, they're more, just a couple degrees more band than boy band.
Right, okay.
And that's maybe for other like extra musical reasons, but it's certainly a gray area. And I sound so inarticulate. I promise my book is much smarter than what I'm saying right now. But maybe it's just, I'm working through it. But let's say they're like 40% boy bands.
Okay. So you've interviewed GC several times. You've written about them a ton, a lot of, around the time of their reunion, which is why I wanted to do this song with you. When was the first time you either interviewed them or wrote about them? I
definitely wrote about them when I worked at Fuse, TV, media, whatever it's called now. And that was like right when I graduated college. So it would have been in like 2013.
Okay.
I probably wrote about them a little bit in college in some capacity, but I think professionally would have been around then. And then around that time is when I became really sort of interested in what the Madden brothers in general were doing.
Yeah.
Because I think the Madden brothers, like the record, the solo project, or the side project rather, comes out in 2014. So I knew that they were like trying to do something else. And I got the sense that some sort of like pop punk, third wave emo type nostalgia thing was like on the horizon in the way that it sort of exists now. I guess like this is also when we start talking about like emo revival, and that term doesn't really mean anything because for some reason Good Charlotte's a part of that as well. But I was just kind of curious to see what they were up to. And then I think as soon as like that curiosity struck, I was like, I got to write about them all the time until somebody lets me do a big profile. And then eventually Rolling Stone did.
Amazing.
But yeah, I think that's kind of the trajectory.
When you're, writing about the same band several times in, several times over like a year or so, how do you keep it fresh? Like, are you going into each interview like, okay, I am writing this type of story for this outlet, or would the story or like the angle come a little later?
Typically in the pitch is when I'll like have fleshed out what the angle is going to be. And that's like, that'll be specific to the publication, the readership, whatever I think is most interesting about them in that given time period. Obviously this doesn't work for all artists because some people are kind of press averse and they're not going to want to do a lot, and you have to work with the limited tools that you have, and some are just not that interesting. But Good Charlotte, especially the Madden brothers, and those are the people I speak to the most. They have always had such a deep appreciation for music press, and they sort of revere music criticism and journalism and writing in general in a way that I find to be really beautiful, and I wish more young musicians did. Not just because they sort of look up to the glitz and glamour of the idea of like a Rolling Stone cover story, but that they really value people who are supposed to be the best or like the most storied veteran listeners. They're going to catch things in music that maybe a producer would be too technical at, or an engineer would be, but they could think of it sort of culturally. They really appreciate that. And when you're working with like an artist who sort of views criticism as its own art form, it's very easy to like keep it fresh and to find new ways in. I really wish more musicians were like them, or at least shared that curiosity of like, okay, if this person's going to tell a story about me,
like, I will open up.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be collaborative because that is sticky and dicey and a little unethical, but like there's a way to make it so that I'm opening up and I'm sharing something about myself and I'm trusting this person with my story, and that trust is felt throughout with the reader and the writer. Yeah.
And I love hearing that they have that deep appreciation for, you know, music critics. But, you know, the music critics have not always been, and I feel like it's a little less so to this day. Like post reunion, it's like a little cooler, or like maybe less uncool to love Good Charlotte, to write positively about them. But especially the early years, a lot of critics, and we, you know, a lot of what we do on the show was like, we'll read reviews, and a lot of critics have been really hard on them, and not just saying negative things, but like just being very mean in reviews. Do you have any thoughts on like why that might be? Like why critics have been just so harsh on Good Charlotte over the years?
Oh my God, so many thoughts.
I have thoughts too, but I want to ask you. Yeah.
Yeah. How much time do we have? No, I actually think this is one way that I do think Good Charlotte relates to the boy band story, where I think a lot of it is the people who appreciate it or are curious about it and can be critical, as well as like enjoy it and be fans, weren't the people who were the dominant voices in music criticism circles. I think that there's like a new appreciation for like pop music or rock music that gets maligned is like directly correlates. If there was a graph in front of me, there would be some sort of intersection with those who get to have access to those critical spaces, women, just people who grew up in like suburbs and loved this stuff and now live in major
now
cities.
They're old enough to.
Yeah, and they're like reconsidering the music that they loved in adolescence because it does stay with us. So there's certainly an element of that. But I also think that they did exist at a time where like criticism, I think, was kind of coming from an old guard where making fun of something was valued, you know?
Right,
like, right. There's some old spin stories, and when I say old, from even like 15 years ago, that like just make me cringe.
Yep. I read a lot of spin around like 15 years ago, and it was like, what?
and it's weird because it's like some of the reviews and stuff are fine, but like there's just some language where I was like, let's just cut the shit. There's so much excess here. If I was an editor, I would just be like taking my red pen all over the place. But yeah, I think that's just like from an old school, like almost famous, like leftover idea where it's like, okay, you can have these observations, but also throw in some casual cruelty for entertainment purposes. I don't know. And then when something is as poppy as Good Charlotte, but it's also like still very much supposed to be a rock band, and they're like doing all of the theatrics of like wearing eyeliner and all this sort of stuff, I can see just like old fart being like, this isn't real, or you're not the Cure, goodbye.
Right. Right.
And obviously that sort of dismissal doesn't fly anymore, though. I don't know. I don't expect to see Good Charlotte being taken seriously in the New Yorker anytime soon, but it is nice that they are in like Rolling Stone or some of these other traditional music spaces.
I have this theory that part of the reason for the shift is that, and this is like kind of goes very along with what you said about, you know, the people who were the fans of this then grow up to be the ones who write about it. I don't know what it was like, you know, 20, 30 years ago, but like nowadays, most people that I know that write about music in any kind of capacity either started by writing for blogs where they weren't making any money, or, you know, they have full-time jobs and like they also write for blogs, or they do something where they make, there's it not as much money in it, or there's not a lot of money in it. So I have this theory that people are also just a little more likely to write about what they like.
Oh yeah, that's certainly interesting. I like that. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah.
And it is interesting because like critics tend to, as they age, like return to things from the past. And I think that's only beneficial because I love like hearing new details about like Frank Sinatra or something, or like Jimi Hendrix. But also the stories have been sort of done to death. But I wonder in like 20 years, is someone like 10 years my junior going to be exposing things about Good Charlotte that I didn't know, and like some really wonderful piece of prose? I would love that. But yeah, I don't know.
So let's dive into Makeshift Love. I mean, first reaction, like what sticks out to you about this song?
It's so John Feldman. Like the intro, those power chords, I'm like, it reminds me of a specific song that I haven't been able to play. So I'm like, no, I think it's just like
totally get, yeah.
I think it's just Feldy. Like even the like, like gang vocals.
Yeah.
But also so Good Charlotte. Not so much early Good Charlotte like Life Changes. I think the sequencing makes a lot of sense on this record in general.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Life Changes is like, this is a classic Good Charlotte song, but also thematically, it's like we're old now. We grew up,
right?
And like,
right. Our life has changed.
Yeah, literally. And then Makeshift Love is like, well, sort of. Like we're still writing from this like heartbroken place. That piece of you that never really leaves.
Right.
Now I've lost my train of thought.
Well, right, they're writing from this heartbroken place, despite both. I think the whole band was married by that point.
Right, which I always find kind of delightful, but then you remind yourself that like not every song when it's written is completely autobiographical to that point in time.
Right, like you could write about something that happened years ago, or you could write about someone else's life.
Exactly, yeah. And it's just like this record in general was just so fun to learn about because it is so purely Good Charlotte, and I think that they mostly Joel, Benji and Joel, like are such incredible songwriters. They have such a like gift for this sort of thing that it doesn't feel sort of dated, but it feels true to who they are, which I think is a really challenging thing to nail, especially with something like pop punk or pop music power chords, which have this like association with a sort of a ceiling that you hit. Like you can only go so far with the sort of sound, but I think you can only go so far, but you can also perfect it and you can get better at it. And I think that's what Good Charlotte has done really well here. And Feldy, of course.
Yeah. I will be honest, this is not my favorite song on this record.
Uh-oh. Are they going to hear this? Are you okay with saying that?
Yeah, I'm okay with saying that. And I remember like when they were releasing the songs leading up to the record, I was kind of like, okay. But I look back in retrospect, and I do think this was the right choice. This was totally the perfect choice to, start off with, because if they had released something like Life Changes as their first single coming back, I almost felt like that would have been too on the nose.
Totally. 100% agree.
Whereas this, like, because that would be like, oh yeah, like our life has changed, but we still sound the same. Whereas this is like, okay, this is not as directly reflective of that.
Right. Yeah. And it shows some maturation. I feel like it's like it's not the slow song by any means, but it's like slowed down a little bit. They're like
So I want to talk a little bit about just the significance of this, the hiatus and reunion. As we mentioned, this is the first song they released after reuniting. Do you remember where you were when you found out about this reunion?
I think maybe like Josh Madden had spoiled it for me. Like he's the one who that's where I get all of my hot gossip from. Maybe I shouldn't be exposing that. But like sometimes he'll tell me he's working on something and I'm like, what? And then it doesn't happen because it's something they're working on or whatever.
Right.
But I was thrilled because when I reached out, it was pretty much under the guise of like, what are the Madden brothers doing? It seems like they're sort of writing music for other people. They're like married to the most beautiful, successful people, like are women on the planet. What is going on in those little noggins of theirs? And turns out a lot of it was like a reunion, and it felt like it came because of their time with 5 Seconds of Summer and their time writing for other bands where they just really did it for the love of it as opposed to like an obvious cash grab, which makes it just more fun and feel more pure of heart.
Yeah, totally. I think that's what makes the reunion significant to me as well. Just knowing that, like, look, they had plenty of money. Like they were not, hurting for that. But feeling like it was, and there was one passage, I think, from one of your articles that I didn't quote, but I had it in my notes where they talked about like the American dream. And I feel like that's almost part of the American dream is like to be able to get to a point where like you can do what you love because you love it. Like that's the ultimate dream, I think, for a lot of people.
Sure, and it's also an evolution of that idea. One thing I was like struck with when I started spending time with them is just like how much they spoke, especially Joel, really like it reminded me of like interviews I've done with rappers, to be quite honest, where it's like they have this like sort of this idea of the American dream, and they use that term sort of fast and loose, but it's tethered to sort of like capitalism. It's like making money, getting out of where you're from because you know that there's bigger, better things than this. And sometimes I'm turned off by that idea, but if you're in a position where you don't have anything,
which they
of course you're going to be obsessed with that. Yeah, like of course you're going to be obsessed with that. And now I'm like my friggin' middle class privilege over here, where I'm like, that's gross. No, but it's really something that they fought for, and they found success. And then I love the idea that you presented of like the American dream sort of evolving for them, where it's like, okay, well, we have all these things that we've wanted, and we're still figuring out like how that. What our lives look like, because you know everyone does at all points of time in their life. But how do we make this, or how do we do the pursuit of happiness part, I guess, of that American dream? And I totally see the reunion being an extension of that.
Yeah, it was very, very special for that reason. And I think the fact that they didn't do like a 5-year tour or a 10-year tour, or, you know, for any of the albums or whatever. They've never really done that. And those can be really fun, but can almost feel like you're trying to cash in on the nostalgia often.
Sure.
But they were like, no, let's put out some new music, which I think was very cool.
Yeah, and I think it can also, like, fans sort of, I think, can tell a little bit when it seems like, oh, they're doing this because for monetary reasons or whatever, which isn't going to stop me from going.
Oh, not at all. Not at all.
But there is just something, there's like an extra element of it where it's like, oh, you really just want to do this as badly as I want to be here? That's cool. That's me.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about what this song means, like what it's about. What are your thoughts, Maria, on like the lyrics of this song?
Well, I think it's very much a breakup song in certain ways. And I don't know. It seems like there's not so much interrogation to be had. Though I do like the flipping of the first verse where it's like, if I can hate these nights, the ones where you don't know me, and then later, if I can hate these fights, the ones where you
clever.
Own me. It's clever, but it also, like, the acknowledgement of being owned, I feel like gives a little bit more autonomy to this ex or whoever this, like, other person who doesn't have a voice in this song, which I like, because I think, like, in early Good Charlotte, like, there is criticism to be had about the girls only liking cars and money and et cetera, et cetera. That's a conversation for another time and perhaps another podcast. But it is like an interesting flipping where I'm like, okay, there's an acknowledgement of this person, like, either owning you because they're defeating you in this debate, or owning you because you feel like you've succumbed to them in some particular way, which is interesting, and also just sort of a clever like rhyme.
I feel like there's a not like a maturity in that, like, okay, yeah, like I have fucked up too, like, you fucked up, everything is broken, you know, the only thing holding us together is, you know, making love or whatever, however you want to interpret that. But it kind of seems a little self-aware of like, all right, I fucked up, you fucked up too, let's, you know, we keep fighting, versus placing the blame on entirely the other person. And it wasn't just Good Charlotte. I think so many bands early 2000s were writing those songs that were not very kind towards their female exes.
Right. Yeah. That's like the most simple, sort of direct, explicit way of putting it. But at least Good Charlotte was never like violent to the female like antagonist in this song.
Well, and I was thinking about this like yesterday as I was doing my notes.
You would know, you're the scholar.
But My Bloody Valentine. But
oh duh! Oh my god, yeah.
But and I did actually read an article about like feminism and how early 2000s bands, you know, did not portray women well, that called out that song. You know, and I feel like that song is clearly fictionalized, but yeah.
Right. Yeah,
there is that.
But I think about this stuff all the time, and I still continue to write about it. But I think like when I was listening to it, sometimes I forget about that sort of stuff simply because I was identifying with the protagonist in the song.
Yeah.
Which I think like many young women were, because it's like, I don't know, teenage boys suck.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, in this particular song, there's none of that, which is certainly something that comes from growing up.
Yeah. It's this song, I think, is definitely like, all right, we need to break up. Like, that's the mindset of this song. Like, I don't think this song is like, oh, everything's terrible, but, you know, we should fight for our love. I think this song is like, all right, whatever we're trying to do to hold this relationship together is not working. Like, we really need to just, like, cut it, like, end it, put an end to things. Peace out, see you never, like, you know. which sucks, but I feel like this song, like, it doesn't make me like sad or heartbroken when I listen to it.
Yeah, I mean, and like sometimes you can celebrate a breakup, or if maybe this is one from the past where it was like needed to be had, or maybe it's about a friend of theirs. I don't know. When you've written as many songs as they have for as long as they have, I feel like it would really never get to the source material unless you, I don't know, sit down and have a couple whiskeys with them.
Right. Music Existence had called this song an authentic return to form. They have a quote about it being a non-breakup breakup song, which I think is quite fitting. I think this is like, you know, I think it's like we need to break up, but like we haven't broken up yet.
Yeah. It could also like sort of, it's also very intentionally like a conversation with himself, which I think is where it's the non-breakup breakup thing. Because like before breakup, you're always like, but then this happened. You have those like sort of fictionalized conversations in your head, or maybe out loud if you're a crazy person like myself. And that totally seems like what this song is, or what it's trying to do.
Yeah. And it makes it kind of fun to listen to, almost. The hearing that, you know, conversation kind of with themselves. And picking apart, okay, is it a conversation with himself, or is he talking to his soon-to-be ex, you know? It makes it kind of fun because it adds, I think, an element of storytelling to it, as opposed to being like, I'm in a relationship, it's not working, we keep fighting, but sometimes we, you know, have sex and it's great. Like, that would just be too straightforward, I think.
Right.
It doesn't have that cleverness.
Yeah. And of course, it's always fun to hear a song that, if it is about a certain breakup, that is just like high energy and fun. It's that sort of duality of like sad song, happy instrumentation, or vice versa, or whatever, which is always nice.
Yeah. Do you have any like specific memories or stories you wanted to share about this song, Maria?
Well, I guess my only one you kind of stole from me, which was at the Troubadour. But that was a sort of bizarre night in general, because I was just like, oh, it'll be fun to see Good Charlotte reunite in this tiny, like, beloved venue in Los Angeles.
Did you know you were like writing that story when you went into the show?
I can't recall, but I think no, because I drank way too much and that would have been really unprofessional. I think it was just, I was so nervous because I like went alone, and I much prefer to have some sort of buffer at all times, especially if it's not like specifically an assignment. Yeah, it must have been after the fact, because I don't remember taking extensive notes or anything. But I was like, I'm going to go to this thing. I'll probably see the like 5 Seconds of Summer boys, who I'd also interviewed a bunch. So that'll be fun. I'll see Feldy. And then I'm like meeting Lionel Richie. And,
amazing.
Like, Cameron Diaz is telling me about her experience like aging in Hollywood and how it's informed her personal feminism. And I'm like, what is this place that I've entered? It was so wild. And I met Mikey Way from My Chemical Romance, and I like would love to write a million things about them should I get that call. But it was a fun time. Especially, I suppose that would have been my first time hearing that song live. So I was probably just elated by not just the celebrity of it all, but just how like much fun everybody seemed to be like. I never thought I would see Lionel Richie at a pop punk show. You know, like
I mean,
as a person who grew up listening to him with my mom, like what a fun little treat.
Joel had posted a picture of Lionel on Father's Day, I want to say. And I remember looking at that and being like, oh yeah, Lionel Richie is Joel Madden's father-in-law. Huh. What a world.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking. Like, I'm not a person who really gets too enamored with celebrity sort of stuff, but I'm like, if they're like musicians, I've appreciated it. And it's just like, it was such a like fun, wholesome time. And everybody was just having the time of their life, because it was either like some people were seeing Good Charlotte for the first time, which I think is something very special about like their reunion. And then other people were like, here, I feel like I've returned to my adolescent self, and not in like a weird, stunted way, but in like a sort of like, I feel that youthful, reckless abandon, and it feels freeing and fun. So that was good.
Wanted so badly. I wanted so badly to go to that show. But I was like, working, crappy part-time jobs and didn't have money. But to this day, I think about like, I could have like figured out a way to fly to Los Angeles for like one night to be there. I could have done it. I've seen them many times since. So
maybe they'll do it again. I hope so. I'm hoping everybody just goes nuts if we get pandemic stuff in order. I just really hope that there's just an explosion of live music and celebration. But
I hope so. See. I mean, it's I'm sure it'll be a while before touring as we knew it happens. Like, I have a My Chem ticket for next September, and like I don't know about that. As much as I hope, knock on wood. But yeah, I feel like people are going to be very just so happy when it's safe. People are going to be so excited to go to shows, which will create more demand for shows, I think.
And I hope in unusual places, like let's do this in a parking lot. They should go back to Waldorf, Maryland, and
I would drive. I'm gonna be 2 hours or something like that away in Philly. I'll drive to Waldorf to see a hometown show in a parking lot. Hell yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, that's my dream for a future utopia.
My one memory I have about this song is listening to it for the first time on NJ Transit, like I want to say very late at night. Because if I remember correctly, I had like a very busy day. I was like walking dogs and I think working retail at that point. So I was just like running around. And then I took a train into New York to photograph a show. So it was like just very late at night. And I was like, taking the NJ Transit very late at night is not always a very good time. Actually, it's never a very good time. But I was like, oh my God, I'm listening to a new Good Charlotte song. This is amazing. So that made it a pretty great train ride.
Yeah, I love that. I like the New Jersey Transit or like Long Island Railroad. That music listening experience, I think, is really beautiful and pure of heart, especially if it's music that you associate with the suburbs in any sort of capacity. Yeah, I think that's the good stuff.
Yeah, there was. I mean, when I had a time period where I started just driving to shows more because I went to shows more like down the shore and stuff like that. So I wasn't taking as much NJ Transit, and I don't know, it's a little different listening to music, on the train versus in your car.
Yeah.
I always like to talk about how a song kind of fits into the rest of their catalog, which, we had just mentioned girls, you mentioned Girls and Boys. I mentioned My Bloody Valentine. I think the way they talk about breakups and breaking up has changed in a good way. Matured, I think, as they have as people.
Right.
Not that there's not still appreciation for those older songs, but, I don't think the same person who wrote Makeshift Love would also be in the same headspace to write My Bloody Valentine. Because,
of course,
those are just very, very, very different, emotional places.
Yeah, it would end in divorce for them.
Yeah, right.
I'm kidding. I have no idea. But yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
I want some good Charlotte songs about fatherhood. There's not enough.
There's a couple, but I feel like, I don't know. I would love to hear more. Now that Benji's also a father.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the lyric video and music video for this song. So the lyric video came out, I think, the day after the song came out, and I guess the music video was a little later. And the lyric video is kind of like a preview for the music video. So we'll touch on that briefly, but the music video we got to talk about. Lyric video, basically people are texting this break app, texting the song lyrics to this app. You get a close-up of a few different people. And then in the music video, the band members work at this break app, which I guess is like an app that dumps your partner for you.
Yeah. It seems like an SNL skit. It's so goofy.
Yeah, it's like an SNL. Oh my god. Okay, so the app is like sending lyrics to the person getting dumped, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, this video is kind of goofy. They're all of the red, and I had remembered that they were like wearing red collared shirts and khakis, and then I'm watching it again, and I'm like, oh, there were like red donuts on the table, red pens, like so many red details, this same shade of red, to really keep up that corporate like brand kind of vibe. I think they're all wearing glasses, and Benji has this. I gotta say, this kind of like horrendous Pizarro wig going on.
Oh, it's horrible.
I don't know.
Purposely horrible, but
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that was intentional. Like it was supposed to look goofy. That's my hope.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's certainly like tongue in cheek parroting, but in a way that I think is also just kind of like goofy dad stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's not in the like Steve Buscemi hello fellow kids meme sort of way, but like in a just sort of, I don't know, they seem like they're just having a good time being really goofy in a way where like if they were younger maybe they would feel too cool to do something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. They're just kind of joking around, not really at the expense of anyone, but just being a little silly.
Yeah, and it's nice that like there are cameos from Feldy and Mikey Way, but also
and water parks.
I was gonna say a bunch of bands on Madden or MDDN, Water Parks, Groves. There's some others that I was recognizing, and it's also part of it. I think it's the scene when Water Parks goes running into the street away from them or whatever. They're actually at the Madden Brothers studio on
amazing.
Sunset. And that studio I remember because I was just like, this feels like I've entered a church or something. It was Graham Nash's studio. Like Eagles recorded there, Prince recorded there, Usher, like Bone Thugs and Harmony, all these Tupac maybe. I think
so
Tupac,
a lot of hip hop.
Yes, yeah. But it was just like and it's all like the walls were just like beautiful wood, and I was like, oh, it looks cool, soundproofing, and it was a really beautiful space. And I remember being intimidated by a room, and I'm like, this is a new feeling for me that you typically only get when you're like going to like cathedrals in Europe or what have you. Really, so that's personally been my only experience of feeling like the weight or severity of a room that wasn't associated with some sort of wartime trauma or whatever. I digress. But they also, I remember when we were there the first time, now I'm just talking about my own experience.
Yeah, go for it.
They played me like 2 unreleased Good Charlotte songs and then 2 unreleased 5 Seconds of Summer songs, but I was recording notes on my phone. So I was like, well, now I own these songs because like we're in the middle of an interview. And then I gave that phone up when I upgraded my phone, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I hope like somebody either saved that or like cleared the phone or something, because they have their hands on some valuable merchandise.
Yeah, wow. Side note, so are we supposed to say MDDN or Madden for the
I
company.
say Madden, but now I feel like I'm doing it wrong. I've always said Madden. I think it's Madden Co.
I feel like I've heard them say both though, but Madden seems more correct. Like it's less of a stumble on the tongue.
I don't think, like, even when I was meeting some of their employees, I don't think anybody was like, hey, I'm Joe from MDDN.
Right.
But why don't I know this? I've been there many times. Oh, God, that's so embarrassing, too. Whatever. It's only 5 years. Well, I guess 5 years is a big chunk of time to get a different president. But, yeah, let's go with Madden Co. Yeah. You can quote me.
Yeah, okay, I'll quote you. It's a great video, and I feel like, just as I was watching it again a couple times the past few days, I feel like someone has to have, like, made this app. Like, wasn't there, like, a rejection hotline, or maybe there still is, like, rejection hotline or rejection number where, like, someone hits on you? Maybe this is just from TV shows, I don't know. But, like, someone hits on you, you can give them this number, and they call or text that number, and that number is like, you just got rejected.
Oh, that certainly sounds like something that is real, and would benefit so many people. But I feel like, and now I don't know if I made this up or this literally was an SNL skit or something, or some sort of, like, I don't know, college humor sort of thing. But I have somewhat of a memory of there being some sort of app where, or not even an app, where you would just, like, if you're trying to break up with somebody, you would text them that number of that person, and then they would text somebody and be like, it's over, blah, 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 doesn't want to date you anymore.
Oh my God.
Does that sound like anything to you? Maybe this is like a dream I had, and I was like, it's $1 million idea.
It sounds like it does not sound very far removed from reality, you know? I don't know.
If it doesn't exist, you're gonna have to cut all of this out so we can right together.
No, I feel like it does exist. It's the kind of thing that, like, any person in actual real life who actually did that, not for their safety, like, that's a jerk move, right? To dump someone via an app, but making a joke out of it, I think, is, like, very, very funny.
Yeah, if a creep is hitting on you and is like, I won't leave until you give me your number, then give them a number that'll make them feel bad at a later date.
Much Music had a great little piece on this music video. They said, complete with iPads, iPhones, and text message bubbles, GC might be trying really hard to convince us they're still hip, cool, and relevant. Or it could be a diversion tactic to distract us from the fact that they all look ... pretty old. Either way, the song itself sounds very similar to their tried and true pop punk sound that made them famous in the early 2000s, so don't expect any EDM reinventions from the Madden brothers and company. I mean, I think that kind of gets it pretty well, you know. I feel like they're kind of, I don't know, I feel like they're kind of poking fun at themselves, and I think they're quite aware of how old they are. I don't think they're pulling this, you know, blank toilet humor into their 40s, kind of.
Right, yeah, I think, like, and this is maybe just a criticism that happens when anybody has been in a band for a very long time, or, like, has been doing their thing for a very long time, but, like, I don't think doing something that feels like mockery of something contemporary or just celebrating something modern is a play at relevancy. It's like, they're also on apps, they're not dead, you know?
Right.
And yeah, I think it's meant to be like jokey. I don't think it's meant to be like I said, they're like, hello, fellow kids. Like, I don't think that they're like, they're doing any of that.
Yeah.
And if they are, it's ironic, and that's good.
Right. Let's go over, I want to go over some critical response to this song. And I've mostly pulled, by the way, like, single reviews, so stuff that people wrote when the song was released, not from album reviews. Though I do wonder if the response, and I feel, and maybe the response, now I'm like, okay, I need to, like, go back and read more Youth Authority reviews, but I wonder if, like, the, you know, critical thoughts on this song changed when it was in the context of the album. Overall, it was like pretty positive, and I think probably a lot of that comes from, you know, excitement about the reunion and everything we've been saying about like now in 2015, the people writing about bands like Good Charlotte were, you know, 12, 13 years old when their first few records were coming out, so they were the fans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wall of Sound compared this song to Chronicles, like they said a combination between Chronicles and their self-titled. And that it's a sappy song with emo connotations and a theme of love lost, something the boys managed to do right back in their peak success. And they said that things are looking good for longtime fans and followers.
Yeah.
Pretty positive. Pure M Zine called it an infectious anthem. Sound and the Signals said they were pleasantly surprised, which was like a common sentiment that I was finding. They said, I will say that it's nice to be pleasantly surprised. Makeshift Love is a pretty exceptional single. It basically takes most aspects of what people enjoyed about those first couple of GC albums and wipes away some of the bad taste of the last 3 albums. Yeah, I think that's very legitimate, and that's, I think if they had tried to be too much of the like ironic, angry, angsty, sarcastic tone that they had in the first couple of records, I feel like that wouldn't have necessarily gone over super well. I feel like people have kind of moved on a little bit.
Yeah. Then that would have seemed like a play at continued relevancy or something, or trying to like recreate what they once did, even if it's untrue to them.
Right. And I've seen plenty of bands try to do that, and it frequently, most of the time, does not work super well, right?
It's also probably not fun for them. I understand like maybe the desire to try to recreate the magic, but I'm like, you can't, like, that can't be fun to like try and do something you once did. I don't know.
I mean, there's bands that, you know, I've mentioned like on the show, Newfound Glory and Simple Plan as bands that tend to kind of know what they do when they do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, which I think is a little different from Good Charlotte, who have like experimented a little more, but yeah, I don't know. The idea of like going back to what you did on the one successful record in hopes of recreating that success, it doesn't resonate with me, because it always seems like, oh, you're just trying to like make a lot of money again.
Right. I don't think that ever works. I'm trying to think of an example of where that might have worked. Even in like film, I think just kind of across art mediums, it doesn't really fly.
A YouTuber named Melissa Kathleen, she pointed out that the line, I'm dying tonight and nobody's crying, is like peak GC. She said you can't get more GC than that. And I was like, you know what? True. That is very like, if I had been like 15 when this song came out, that is the line I would have just grabbed onto, like super intensely.
It's like your AOL away message.
Yes. And then it would be like calls, you know, from the school, like, your child put this on AIM. Is she okay? Beyond ARTV gave it a 4 to 4.5 out of 5. I have to note that his face
4.5. Sorry, that's really funny. Just give it a 5.
Right. His face is out of focus, which is like throwing me off in the whole thing. Not that it reflects the quality of the review itself. He said he fell for the guitar riff, that it's effortless and infectious as hell, and that despite his preconceived notions, he likes the lyrics. He also pointed out that it's not musical genius, but it's better than the standard, and that it lifted his spirits.
This guy sounds like a hoop.
Right? I'm just like, I don't know, like, what kind of headspace are you coming from? Because I feel like this is like a reluctant GC fan, or someone who was like reluctantly still a fan. Like, oh, I actually really like it. I have to say that I didn't expect to like it, because if I expected to like it, I'll sound just like a fangirl.
But like when you say better than the standard, like standard Good Charlotte song,
or like
standard music?
Right. That's what I didn't know. Like, I don't know. This was confusing me. I want to read some fan comments now, and there was actually a lot of great comments on the Beyond ARTV review. So we'll link this in the show notes. Dang It Butters said, this was my favorite band like 10 years ago. I saw them live when I was like 16. I grew apart from them the more I matured, but when I saw they were back, I couldn't wait to see what they were going to release. I'm really excited about them coming back.
Dang It Butters, that's really sweet.
Yeah. A lot of people debating Cardiology versus Good Morning Revival. Kayla's Reading Web said, so far, Makeshift Love is sharing the number 3 spot with Chronicles of Life and Death after Cardiology and Good Morning Revival. That's what it reminds me of. It's not as hard as Young and the Hopeless and not as soft as Good Morning Revival.
Yeah.
The Insaniac Project said, Good Charlotte is my favorite band of all time. The only gripe I have with the song is when they said, God damn. That's just not something they would do usually, and I prefer not to hear the term. Other than that, love the song. I have to
Insaniac Project definitely is in youth group.
Yeah, I was gonna say this sounds like we've read a few like Focus on the Family has a website that there's a couple different websites that are like very Christian conservative that like review music and kind of grade it on how appropriate it is, like how child appropriate it is, how Christian appropriate it is. Yeah. I should send you some links of some Good Charlotte reviews on those because they're a trip.
That's interesting. Yeah, I recently wrote a paper for Pop Conference. This is like this annual music nerd and academic conference about like third wave emo pop punk and youth group and the relationship there, like with Reliant K and like Pedro the Lion and Under Oath and all those bands. But because I also had a friend who was like a chaplain's daughter when I was a teenager, and they were so funny because there were like some bands she could listen to and some that she couldn't. Yeah. And to me, I was like, did they just open up an issue of alternative press and like draw X's over the back?
It's very interesting to read these articles because I did an episode on We Believe over the summer. And I just recently, a week or two ago, did an episode on The River. It'll be live by the time this is live. That's why I'm saying it. And yeah, I mean, I will say in general, the religious websites tend to praise Good Charlotte's faith-oriented type songs. Songs like We Believe and The River, they appreciate those sentiments and how a lot of their stuff has sentiments of faith, even if it's not like preaching. And they tend to praise that Good Charlotte has a lot of hope in a lot of their music. But I'm curious how they might have reacted to this song and the word goddamn.
That's so interesting. And it's like, wow, because I certainly know that like in like the heyday, like pre-reunion Good Charlotte, that was also when like youth group was such a thing, but also sort of obsessed with like pop punk and emo and using that to like teach faith, or like I should say Christian faith. It's not faith in general. It's very much, there's a very clear religiosity there. Yeah, that is so interesting. But like I gotta read more.
I'll shoot you
or whatever.
I'll shoot you some of the like religious type reviews. I'll email those to you because I feel like you'll find that really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I could totally see somebody like trying to read Christianity into a lot of what Good Charlotte like hold on or whatever. That makes a lot of sense to me. So it is a little bit weird to like prescribe your own religion to something. I'm like, it might just be about.
Well, and some of those will kind of talk about just how generally family appropriate the songs are, right? Like Hold On has, the sites, all those sites, they like something like Hold On because it gives them hope and everything, right? Something like My Bloody Valentine, the Christian conservative websites, do not enjoy. I just want to read a few quick comments on the actual music video.
Yeah.
Because there's some really good ones. Microbabe said they're here for 2 reasons. One being that they're from Maryland, and 2, I heard Mikey Ways in this video, and I've had a crush on him for like 12 years, which, like, fair. Ferrard forever. So we know what brought this person to the video. Ferrard. The emos are here. Kamara Hamilton just says, glad they are back. Thinks about the pizza that fell. R.I.P. pizza. You will be missed.
I kind of want pizza now. That
I know.
On me.
I know. I am really wanting to order from my my favorite pizza place here before I move. I'm like, I need to do it again.
You have to. Maybe every day. Live a little. Right. I don't know. It's pandemic time. I'm spoiling myself.
I know. I'm like, it's the pandemic. I got to support local businesses. Oh my God, I'm moving soon. I got to enjoy my few local businesses here before I move, and they're not right there anymore.
So let me do pizza every day. Whatever.
Right. Let me do pizza every day. I have to also mention a band called, and I don't know if I'm saying this right, Paraiso 19 covered this song. The vocals don't totally do it for me, but the cover is fun, and musically their cover feels like very Enema era Blink-182. Yeah, it's 2 twin brothers from Spain, so that's sweet.
Oh,
yeah. And you can definitely hear the accent when they sing, which I always love that, when you can like hear someone's accent when they're singing. I think that's very cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I don't know much about this band, and I didn't see like a whole lot. I like looked up their Facebook and Twitter. But yeah, shout out. I'll have to tag them and when I tweet about the episode and everything.
Yeah.
Maria, so how has this, I mean, it's only been a couple of years, or 5 years, I guess. How has this song held up for you over the 5 years?
I can't say that it's one that I've revisited frequently. Mm-hmm. However, as soon as I turned it on, I like knew the hook and everything. Yes. So it was like, it's very much like 80 people, comments you've read who said it's infectious. So very much it has that like sort of earworm quality that all got good like pop rock music should have.
Yeah.
But it was nice to have an excuse to listen to it, and then also just like Youth Authority in general.
Yeah.
I appreciated that.
Yeah, I definitely, and you know, as I kind of said earlier, I think this song has grown on me a lot. It definitely was not one that I like really, especially as we're talking about like the, you know, kind of playing with himself and talking to himself in this song. I really, really appreciate.
Yeah.
What, just a few questions to wrap things up. What has Good Charlotte meant to you over the years, and how has that changed?
It's truly wild.
Yeah.
Like kind of coming from like, ooh, I don't really like this band because I'm a self-hating teenager, probably, maybe even a friggin' child, a friggin' baby, to recognizing that I appreciated them, to writing stories about them and sort of building a relationship with them has been really wonderful. I mean, obviously that impacts the kind of writing I can do about them now, while still adhering to my own personal journalistic ethics. But it was really sort of such a treat to realize that, especially the Madden brothers, that like these people that I was so curious about, just proved to be better people than I would have imagined. And it like makes so much sense to me that people are so like attracted to them and I don't mean that in like a weird physical way. I mean that
like in an emotional way.
Yeah. Like they're just really friendly, good-hearted, kind, like hardworking people. And I do still, everyone like they'll still every once in a while hit me up about like something that they're interested in or like music that they're into, and they're like, what do you think about this? And it's like very clear that they appreciate like journalists and journalists' brains, and I think they're the best. And also I was like so charmed to see that I was thanked on this record.
Amazing.
And then of course I paid it forward and I thanked them in my book.
I noticed that. Yeah,
so it's their move.
I think Good Charlotte fans got really lucky. Like, you know, there's that Wonder Years line where he says, "Growing up means watching my heroes turn human in front of me," which, like, really is a negative thing. And they, you know, there's often that saying, "Never meet your heroes," but, like, you know, I put out a book that was like an anthology, and in my little piece about Good Charlotte in there, I was like, yeah, like, everyone says don't meet your heroes, but, like, I met mine and it was, like, pretty great. Like, you know, brief interaction, not like a meet and greet, but, like, you know, I felt like I got lucky in that aspect.
Especially in this, like, musical world, there's so many few good guys, and they are just the best. I had a little moment like that with I really loved Thursday, and I like when I was a kid, I idolized Jeff Rickley, the singer, mostly because I thought he was just like a brilliant lyricist, and I liked that he obviously, like, for many years couldn't sing, and I like that, like, sort of like punk rock ethos of, like, learning on the job. And then I met him, and now he's a very good friend of mine, and it was just kind of like a nice sort of thing to be like, oh, this could have gone terribly, but, like, not only did it go so well, like, now we built some sort of camaraderie. And amazing. Like, that is so rare. It's so rare. I would say, like, the Maddens and, like, maybe Jeff Rickley are the good guys.
It's like, it feels like it, to me, when I've had those instances, like, it feels like it validates my younger self in a really big way, because it's like, totally. Wow, this thing that my younger self grabbed onto, not only was it not just a fad or a phase, like, it was good. It was good, and the person who made it is good.
Yeah. So I would say, if anybody's listening to this and they've met their heroes and had a horrible experience, you know, that I think is the more common.
Totally. Yes.
Because you like talk it up too much in your head, or, like, I don't know, but you expect too much.
Yeah. Maria, do you have any last words about Makeshift Love, about Good Charlotte, about, you know, yourself or your book that you want to share?
Oh, God. I guess I should.
I mean, I feel like we could have so many conversations about Good Charlotte, but
yeah. Maybe, I don't know. I think we're ending in kind of a beautiful place here, where we're talking about the song and how they've grown, and also just that this is a good band of good dudes, and, you know, that is more than enough.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, before we close things out, Maria, I make a Generation GC and Friends Spotify playlist, which I include the song that we cover on the show, as well as a recommendation from my guest. So would you like to leave our listeners with a recommendation? Just anything you've been listening to lately that you're digging.
Oh my God, no. Well, I've been, like, so in, like, boy band book prep.
Boy bands are totally up for grabs. Anything you're digging lately?
I'm trying to think of, like, what's the most pop rocky boy band song. It's got to be a One Direction song.
Yeah.
Maybe What a Feeling.
Ooh, okay, good one.
This is gonna be a chaotic playlist. I'm so sorry.
No, the playlist is chaotic. The playlist is chaotic. Yeah.
It's like boy band and then, like, harsh noise that certainly won't be on any major streaming platform. So that's where I'm at emotionally. I'm kidding. But yeah, What a Feeling. I think that'll be nice.
Amazing. Maria, thank you so much. I'll share a link to your book, of course, and where can people keep up with you on the socials?
The best place is Twitter, where I'm at
Amazing.
Maria Sherman. And I mean, you can look at my Instagram, but I really don't know what I'm doing over there. So
I feel like Instagram, you have to have much more of a strategy than Twitter. Like, Twitter, you can kind of just tweet.
I think I just don't have a visual brain. I'm much more of, like, a music written word kind of gal.
Right,
like,
right.
It really just doesn't. I'm never going to make it look nice. But yeah, thank you so much. This was so fun.
This is amazing. Maria, thank you for coming on the show. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. Last week, we talked about Standing Ovation from Cardiology. A few days ago, we had a bonus episode on Good Charlotte's cover of Last Christmas. Next week, we'll be talking about a song from Generation RX. My name is Molly Hudelson. I've been your host. You can follow Generation GC at Generation GC Pod, P-O-D, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also follow me, Molly, at M Hudelson, M-H-U-D-E-L-S-O-N, on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you for tuning in. Please make sure you are subscribed to the show wherever you listen to podcasts and rate it, leave a review, and tell a friend.